Even years later, the events of that day still haunt us. On January 22nd, 2008, Jack Hansen got out of bed at about 8 a.m. From his bedroom window, he noticed the ominous signs of an incoming snowstorm in the dull sky. So he put on his warmest outfit. He had buttered toast for breakfast. He combed his hair and then brushed his teeth. He packed his books, pencils, and pens into his worn-out backpack. He waved goodbye to me and stepped outside, our car blocked inside the garage by the snow that had fallen overnight. Bobby Sullivan claims he saw Jack on his walk to school that morning. He says Jack was standing in the middle of the road, motionless and silent. He just stood there, eyes locked on something hovering just above Bobby's truck. Bobby had to quickly swerve to miss him, yelling angrily as his tires screeched. Jack didn't even flinch. He said he felt more annoyed than puzzled, since Jack often acted strange like that. School records show Jack showed up late, around 9:30, which is odd because the school was only a 15-minute walk from our place. No one has ever been able to explain where he was during the 45 minutes between Bobby's sighting and his arrival. All his teachers confirmed seeing him in class, and we still have the receipt for his school lunch. The final bell rang at 2:45 p.m., and that's when the first flakes of the worst blizzard Solomon Falls, Maine had seen in years started to fall. Ruthie Jones remembers watching him leave the classroom. She didn't see where he went, only that he bolted out like he was being chased. Dad was at the hospital working late like he usually did in the winter. I didn't go to school that day. I was too ill to move and kept drifting in and out of feverish sleep. I think I fell asleep around 1 p.m. and didn't wake again until close to 4. I called out his name. I just wanted a glass of water. I called out again and again. When I noticed he wasn't home, I didn't think much of it. He often stayed after school to work on art with Mr. Wesley. My brother was gifted, seriously gifted. One of his paintings still hangs in my room. Every time I glance at it, I remember those empty hours. Falling asleep again easily, sure he'd come back. Dad came home at 8 p.m. and woke me. He asked where Jack was. I assumed he would have known. He hadn't. We contacted Mr. Wesley. He'd been home that day, down with the same harsh flu I had, which had been brutal that winter. We reached out to his friends, hoping maybe he'd gone over to work on school assignments. He wasn't there. By the time we notified the authorities, the blizzard had fully taken over, a total whiteout. The phone lines failed. We couldn't begin searching until morning. On January 23rd, 2008, we set out at first light. I still believed we'd find him. My dad said he believed it too. It took me years to see that he had lied. 3 hours into the search, we saw it. I was the first to notice. It was wrapped around the trailhead leading into Donner Woods, a thick evergreen forest bordering our town's edge, about a mile from the school. It waved like a flag in the violent wind, a strip of corduroy, the beige stained coppery with dried blood. Someone had written on it in thick black marker, "At last." The fabric was from the pants Jack had been wearing that day. It wasn't his handwriting. My name is Kara Hansen, and I've lived without my brother for 10 years now. Some say time heals, but I disagree. You just get better at concealing the sorrow. I feel his absence daily. He had been a part of me, completely unlike me, yet he completed me in every way. Dad and I adored him deeply, and facing each day without him was excruciating at first. With time, Dad and I pieced together a life amid the sorrow, though something always felt missing. Dad still lives in Solomon Falls and hasn't touched Jack's room in 10 years. I don't think either of us ever truly moved forward. My brother was unique, remarkable, and impossible to replace. I'm 26 now, and nothing feels easier than it did when I discovered that dreadful strip of fabric in the snow. But maybe that's beside the point. You don't have to care about my sad tale. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I've had plenty of that over the years. I'm sharing this because I seriously need help. I get that this might not be the right place, but I don't know what else to do other than spread this to anyone who might help figure it out. I need answers. I need to know what's happening and how to deal with it. The package had been jammed into my mailbox at my building, crammed between junk and bills like it burned the hands of the mailman. At first, I had to make sure it was even meant for me. I don't have much of a social circle, and even though I've stayed up until 3 a.m. making impulse buys on Amazon Prime, this definitely wasn't one of those. But sure enough, it was addressed to Kara Hansen in Chicago, Illinois. No sender listed. I narrowed my eyes at it, flipping it over a few times in my hands, trying to figure out what was inside. It felt light, smooth, the paper cool against my skin. Finally, I glanced around the mailroom and shrugged. Why not, right? I ripped the package open. There, folded neatly into a perfect square beneath the paper, was a sweater knitted from pale green yarn. My breath caught. My hand started trembling so badly that I dropped the sweater, which landed with a soft thud and flopped out like tangled limbs. I gawked at it like a startled animal, unable to process what I was seeing. Suddenly, my gaze landed on a tiny white square that had slipped from the fabric. I knelt down, my whole body buzzing with nervous dread as I picked it up. Everything around me was starting to blur, but through my watery vision, I saw that I was holding a newspaper clipping, a headline from a February 2009 issue of the Solomon Falls Gazette that read, "Major Breakthroughs in Pediatric Medicine at City Hospital." After a quick glance, I shoved the slip into my pocket, too dazed by what I was looking at to pay attention to the odd little article. Could it be? No, impossible. Yet it was. The same brown blotch on the right wrist from when he spilled Dad's coffee on Father's Day, the same tear on the shoulder where the yarn had started to come undone. God, it even had that same scent. The pine, his sandalwood cologne, the stale musk of our childhood home, like he had never walked out the door that morning, like he had never left at all. The sweater belonged to Jack. I had made it for him. He got cold easily. He had always been like that, delicate. He was slim and bare-skinned except for the golden brown mess on his head. He was dreamy, thoughtful, and constantly frail. The breeze stirred when he caught colds. I wanted to protect him, so I gave it to him for our 12th birthday. He didn't grow much after that, so he kept wearing it. It was his favorite. He liked how the green brought out his eyes. He said it kept him warmer than any jacket ever could, which is why he wore it on the day he vanished. My stomach turned, and I felt, with a strange awe, almost fear, that my face was soaked in tears. The dark letters on the newspaper piece had begun to smear into purple. I snatched the sweater off the floor and dashed up all 3 flights of stairs back to my apartment. It was after Brett had left town that the strange signals began appearing. We were both 14 then. The light in Jack's eyes had just started returning after Brett was gone. It was his first time without him. He had to learn to exist without his closest friend, the one he loved more than anyone, maybe even more than me, I sometimes thought. My brother was tender, hands like chilled water, a voice like a melody, eyes as soft as a deer's. When Brett left, I assumed he would harden, become a bit tougher, less innocent. But instead, he just turned dimmer, duller for a while, his kindness more from lack of drive than genuine warmth. Thing is, Jack's empathy never ran out. So as winter came, I began to get my brother back. I recall the exact moment the first one showed up, December 16th, 2005, at 6 p.m. It was one of those December nights where the sunset didn't show, only a faint gray-orange glow leaking through the window. My brother was softly humming a slowed-down version of a George Michael song, "'Cause I gotta have faith, faith, faith." He murmured it, distractedly clinking one dish onto another with a clatter that made me nervous. "Jack," I said, peering over my book, "you really need to focus when you're handling that." At the time, it felt like a minor remark, something I said often to snap him out of the cloud he always floated in. My brother's eyes were deep brown, almost golden, wide and bright, and they would often glaze over as he slipped into the imaginary world he built for himself. Each time I remember snapping at him for being spacey, I'm overwhelmed with a searing remorse so sharp I feel like I'm drowning. I wish I'd just let him be. I wish I had embraced who he was, been kinder, hugged him more while I still had the chance. Before he could reply, the doorbell rang. A high-pitched, piercing sound that echoed through the home, followed by a fast, urgent repetition, like someone was hammering at it. "Good grief," my dad called from the other room. "Must be the mailman. Open the door, Kara." I rolled my eyes. Dad was so obsessed with the West Wing, he wouldn't even move to check who was banging like mad at the entrance. I slid my chair back and was about to stand when I felt Jack's gentle fingers on my shoulder. "Let me." "Why?" I asked, lowering myself back. The bell now rang without pause, pressed again and again, and there was something different about it. It sounded furious, deeply, painfully furious. "I just don't think they're here for you." For some reason I couldn't explain, my chest started tightening. Suddenly, the gravity of the moment began to settle in. Who was trying so frantically to get inside? What could they possibly want from us? My brother's gut feelings were always mysterious to me. I don't think I could ever fully grasp them, but they never missed. Something was wrong. Something felt off. The chill in the air wasn't just from the storm. "Jack?" I said, and he froze with his fingers on the knob. "Maybe don't open it, they seem." He understood me. He always did. He gave a faint smile, tight-lipped and almost sorrowful. He pulled the door open. The noise ended instantly, and all that remained was the slicing wind, thick and sharp. My brother whispered a soft, "Oh," then closed the door and walked back to the kitchen. He said nothing, just sat beside me, his face calm and blank. I gawked at him like he had sprouted horns. "So, who was it?" He lifted his shoulders. "No one, just these." He set a small pair of white mittens on the table. They were very small, clearly made for a young child, maybe even an infant. "What do you mean, no one?" I asked, inspecting the mittens. They weren't purely white, I soon noticed. The left thumb had a strange, jagged yellow mark and a tiny rip in the same spot. You think some kid was just messing with us? No, Cora, no one was ever outside. I waited for him to laugh, but his eyes stayed vacant, like he'd just told me water is wet. At that point, Dad wandered into the room, stretching and yawning as he stepped in. "What's the noise about?" he asked, glancing between us. Who was knocking? A vacuum guy or the IRS? Sounded like the president himself was at the door. Wish he was so I could teach him a lesson or two. He let out a big laugh, and even I chuckled, though my heart was still racing. Jack motioned to the mittens, and Dad's gaze followed. His expression immediately drained of color, but he tried to keep his cool, maybe noticing my worry. No way. He moved in closer, resting a hand on Jack's shoulder. "Who was there, Pumpkin?" Jack stayed still. "There wasn't anyone, just those." I folded my arms and turned to Dad. "Dad, he's just making things up again." My brother tilted his head. "No, Kara, nobody could have been there. There weren't any footprints." I felt my stomach plummet. I opened my mouth, but my voice caught in my dry throat. Dad must have noticed the fear on my face because he quickly jumped in. It had to be the wind, definitely. He picked up one of the mittens and held it close to his eyes, studying it like he expected it to suddenly bite him. "The winds out there are monstrous. I bet it knocked the doorbell and blew these right onto the porch." "Spooky, but nothing to be scared of." He kissed us both on the forehead. "Don't start getting all worked up now. Talking to you, Care Bear." He gave me a pointed look. I rolled my eyes, even though I was the nervous one. It was clear my dad was rattled too. His eyes were wider than when he entered, his body stiff as a board. Jack, on the other hand, never got nervous, and that didn't change. He was calm, composed, and completely unfazed. Sometimes I wonder how he managed to stay that way. I don't think it was because he didn't understand the danger. It was something else. Jack always had a grasp on that something else, but it never frightened him. My brother just didn't feel fear. Sometimes I wish he did. Maybe then he wouldn't have... Well, never mind. I try not to dwell on the what-ifs. It just makes the pain worse, I suppose. Anyway, eventually my tension wore off, and my brother's easygoing nature started to calm me too. Soon enough, I'd forgotten about the whole incident. That is, until the next pair arrived. It was nearly exactly a month later. This time, there was no doorbell. My brother stood up from the table when the clock struck 6, opened the door, closed it after a brief moment, and placed the mittens right beside our pine candle centerpiece. "These are red," he said, as if I couldn't see. I had no idea how to respond. I just stared. I still didn't know what to say when the next pair arrived, or the next, or any of the pairs my brother received month after month for over 2 years. It's strange how we humans adapt to the unexplainable. He simply accepted the mittens as part of his life, and eventually, so did I. Each time, the color and size varied slightly, but they were always clearly for children, though which children we could never figure out. The one constant was the torn thumb, the peculiar yellow stain, and the complete lack of any sign in the snow that anyone had come to our door. My brother never gave any of them away, just stacked them neatly in a drawer. On a deep, instinctive level, I understood why. These mittens were cursed somehow. No one could wear them, but he also said he couldn't bring himself to throw any of them out. "They're for me, Kara," he told me. "I can't give them to anyone else." As the sun began to set the day after my brother disappeared, I stopped crying long enough to drag my exhausted legs to the door. I don't know why I expected the mittens to be there or why I felt the urge to pick them up. It was just something deep inside me that felt like I had no choice but to do it, a compulsion so strong I couldn't disregard it. But when I opened the door, there was nothing. The porch was empty, no mittens, and I nearly burst into tears from the relief. That is, until my gaze shifted to the snow beyond our doorstep. The familiar sting of fresh tears returned, freezing on my cheeks as I took in what lay ahead. There, in the snow, were large, clear footprints, but they didn't go to the door. I traced the path with my eyes, leading it around the side of the house, right to Jack's bedroom window, where they suddenly stopped. Gently placed beneath the window was a pair of mittens. They were adult-sized, knitted from thick reddish-brown yarn, my mother's final gift to him before she passed. I picked them up with a chilling calm that rose from a dark place deep within me, a place I never want to revisit, a place without feeling, crafted solely to hold my grief. That moment is etched into my mind, forever tainted by the sorrow of the realization that this was real. This was real, and he was gone. And then another thought hit me, something I hadn't noticed before. The footprints did lead directly to Jack's window, but they had started at the window and moved toward the front door. The window itself was slightly ajar, as though someone had been unable to close it fully. There were no prints coming toward the house, only leaving it. I've never run faster in my life. I slammed the door shut and locked the deadbolt. I never told the police. I never told Dad. If you ask me why, I couldn't explain it rationally. Somehow, I just felt that this delivery was for me and me alone. I'm the only one who knows what I discovered in the snow that day. The mittens stopped coming after that. His paintings were done in oil on canvas. When he worked, you'd never see his brow crease or his hazel eyes squint. He would smile faintly at the edges of his lips, his brush flowing in slow, confident strokes. He always knew exactly where he would end up when he started. He never questioned anything. He simply brought to life the beauty he saw on the blank canvas. Every time I look at his paintings, I feel the air leave my lungs. It's like filling your chest with something you can't name, but desperately need. For the first few weeks after, we were too afraid to touch them. Losing him wasn't like the absence of something. It was more like the presence of something sinister, guarding the proof that he had once been here. Every time my dad moved toward one of his paintings, it felt as though something in our house would snap at him, and we'd instinctively pull back. I walked down the long hallway to my room every night, catching glimpses of those shadowed paintings from the corner of my eye. One day, I returned to find my father tearing them down in a frenzy, as though something were chasing him. His eyes were frantic, his hair in disarray, almost growling. In a sense, my father's heart froze that day. He had no more fear left. He shoved the last remnants of his son into a closet, and we haven't touched them since. The only one I've seen since that dreadful winter day is the one I kept in my room. He painted it just for me. When I rushed into the room today, Jack's sweater pressed to my chest like a charm. It was the first thing I saw. I had spent the money from my college graduation gifts to frame it in the finest mahogany I could find and hung it above the wall facing my door. Aurora Borealis, over Donner Woods, the glowing ribbons of light hovering over the snow-covered pines. If you stared at that painting long enough, I swear the light started to shimmer, the way sunlight dances on a summer lake, shifting through every hue between wine red and soft pink. When I looked at it then, they were a dull copper, just like the fabric had been that day. Suddenly, I felt a wave of nausea. I threw the sweater as far from me as I could, hoping to toss it into the corner of the room and keep it there forever. Finally, trap the sorrow. Finally, erase the memory. "I need to call the police," I whispered. The room remained silent. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, and as I did, a newspaper clipping slipped out and drifted to the floor. It landed on the other side, and I noticed a handwritten message on it, written in elegant script. "Do you recall the window behind him that night at the party?" I stared at the note, stunned. I had no idea what it meant. Who was him? Jack? Dad? Before I could start making sense of what that could mean, my phone buzzed weakly in my hand. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize, the Solomon Falls area code. I thought maybe it was the sheriff. Maybe they had found something related to my brother, another belonging of his, or worse, a body. I answered the call. The voice on the other end spoke before I could. "Hey, is this, Mary Jones?" There was a short pause. Before I could respond, the voice, male and crackling, spoke again. I know, it's more common to, text, but I had fun last night, so I called." I said, trying to make sense of the bizarre turn this conversation was taking, considering my state of mind that day. "No, you got the wrong number. My name's Kara Hansen." Another brief silence. Kara Hansen, like Kara Hansen, from the class of 2010, at Solomon Falls High. Yeah, that's me. Sorry, I'm a little rattled right now. Who is this?" The voice on the other end grew more excited. "Holy heck, it's me, Kara, Jamie Brown. Do you remember me?" "Oh my God, yes, of course I do." Jamie was an old friend from back home, back in '99, when we were in 3rd grade. He had climbed the tallest branch of a tree, and his arms got stuck, so everyone called him Brown Bear for way too long after that. He had been my first kiss, and I thought he'd be my first boyfriend, but I didn't have the stomach for that after losing my brother. Like with all my friends from the Falls, we lost touch after high school. "How are you? How'd you end up calling me?" "I'm great, just great. I moved back home a few weeks ago, actually. I drive for Uber. A whole lot of good that art history master's degree did me, huh? And I dialed this number, trying to reach Mary Jones. You remember her, don't you?" I did remember her. She had been a friendly acquaintance, smart and very pretty. Well, she stayed over last night and left her number, and I wanted to call her to, I could almost feel his face growing warmer, even though he was far away. Something kept tugging at the back of my mind. Something related to the note, but I couldn't quite figure it out yet. Well, never mind. It doesn't really matter why I called, but I entered the last few digits wrong. I realize now that I have you on speaker. I'm driving, a customer. Oh, no, not at all. Nothing like that. Just driving around. Business isn't exactly booming, you know what I mean? I understood. Our town had about 1,200 people, most of whom were older than the mountains surrounding our little village. I'm actually driving by Kate's place. That's Kate Williams. You remember her? Remember Christmas Eve? Before your brother, I mean. Sorry about that. Hey, I saw your dad at the grocery store the other day. He looked great, really great, all smiles, a lot of color in his face. It was nice to see, yeah. His voice was muffled, hard to make out. I could barely understand him because of the buzzing in my mind. I had put the pieces together. The Christmas Eve party in 2007, just a month before my brother vanished. One minute, Jamie and I were kissing, his hands in my hair, feeling warm all over, and the next, he stopped and started laughing, almost absent-mindedly. He told me some strange story, totally unrelated to anything we had been talking about. It was about the time he and I had been playing in a clearing near the woods back in 1996 when we were 5, and I had stolen his jacket, his hat. No, wait, he said. He had said I took his mittens. Yes, his mittens, the ones his grandmother had made, and I had shoved them into his locker just last month. They were definitely the mittens I had taken. The little heart was sewn into the palm and everything. Did I remember? But I didn't. I had never played with Jamie in the woods when we were little. I hadn't even met him until everyone started calling him Bear. So it must have been 1999 or later. I told him that, and he must have confused me with someone else. But Kate Williams had a nice house, built a long time ago, probably from wood taken from Donner before it became protected land. There was this nice square window on the wall facing the bed. Jamie was sitting cross-legged facing me. I was staring directly out the window. He asked, "Do you remember?" And as I said no, my eyes drifted to the window behind him, and, oh God, sorry, I haven't thought about this in so long I don't even know how to explain it. It was my mother. Oh God, it was my mother, who had been dead for 8 years by that point. But it wasn't truly her, not really. Half of her face appeared normal, as smooth and beautiful as when I last saw her. But the other half was a grotesque mass of exposed, bloody tissue. The flesh that had once covered trembling muscle now flapped in the cold breeze. She had no instead, her mouth was filled with writhing, slimy earthworms, more than seemed physically possible. Some of them slithered over her face, making their way into the empty eye socket. With one hand as graceful and delicate as it had been in life, she beckoned for me to come closer, pointing insistently toward the dense pines behind her. In the other hand, she held a shapeless black mass, which I realized with horror was a raw, tangled mass of hair, with a piece of scalp still clinging to the end. I didn't scream. I couldn't. In an instant, I looked back at Jamie, and then back at the window. Outside, all I could see was the still winter night, the soft light of the full moon illuminating the blanket of snow. I whispered meekly that I didn't want Jamie to tell that story anymore. I told him I wanted to go home. I was utterly drunk, too intoxicated for Jamie to even help me off the bed. I called Jack, and he drove me home while I sobbed. The next morning, as horrifying as what I had seen was, I brushed it off. The whole image was hazy, clouded by my partial memory loss, and it must have been a hallucination brought on by alcohol and the excitement of my first kiss. It was terrifying, but with my brother's disappearance soon after, his was the only face I had room for in my nightmares. The note referenced it. If Jamie hadn't called, it would have taken me hours to remember, but as soon as he did, I read the note. Then he drove past Kate Williams' house and reminded me. Jamie, I interrupted his ramblings. Tell me again. You called me because you dialed the wrong number. Yeah, all just an accident. Silly me, right? I went quiet for so long that he spoke up. Kara? You, still there? Yes, I said. I am? I crossed the room and picked up Jack's sweater from the floor. My brother, who had been a part of me, my brother who had always been there for me, no matter what. At that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Jamie, any chance you can lower the cost when you pick me up from the airport? I'm on a plane as I write this. I called Dad. He's in my old room, waiting for me to return home. Jamie's already at the airport, waiting for me at the gate. The sweater is packed into my suitcase, rumbling somewhere beneath the plane. I'm reminded of something Jack told me when Brett had left. If you love someone, they never truly leave you. I feel his presence, a vibration somewhere near my hometown. I don't know who has him or what they want from me, but here's what I do know. I won't leave my brother behind again. Hold on, Jack. I'll be with you soon. First, I can't thank you all enough for the support you showed after my first update. It's meant everything to me, and it's given me strength through this difficult time. Not only that, but you forced me to revisit my memories. Ordinary memories, ones I had overlooked, from completely different viewpoints. You made me question things I never even realized I had. I'm not sure I could do this without your encouragement. I know there were things I left unclear in my first post, and I hope you can forgive me for that. I was panicked when I wrote it. I'll try to be clearer as we move forward. When I was a child, my mom gave me a music box. On the outside, it was a simple, calm lavender. But when you opened it, music notes spilled out, vivid like stained glass, soothing and mesmerizing. It always startled me when I opened it. It was as if I saw an entire new world come to life. Recalling the image of my mom's face in the window hit me with the same shock as opening that box. But this shock wasn't filled with joy. It was fear, sorrow, revulsion. Forgetting the event was so effortless, so clean. My memory used to end with Jack's arm around my shoulder, guiding my clumsy steps to the truck while Jamie watched us from the door. Jack wasn't even trying to speak to me. He simply helped me into the passenger seat while I cried. He got in. The truck rumbled to life. The bright lights flashed against Katie's house, and then there was nothing. The memory stopped there. I assumed it was just a blackout, but then I found the note, the box, misplaced. A song started pouring from my mind, but disjointed and erratic. The memories of that Christmas Eve, which I had always buried, sprang to life. The hum of our old pickup truck surrounded us. The seats bounced up and down along the bumpy road. My brother was usually lost in his thoughts, but that night, with his hands on the wheel, his eyes were sharp enough to catch a butterfly. The road beneath us was slick with ice, yet he drove with calm, assured control. For some reason, I'm still unsure of, he took the route parallel to Donner. The image of that thing stayed fresh in my mind. I began crying, loud and uncontrollable sobs shaking my body. He kept his gaze on the road, but his voice was soft, like he was trying to soothe the child to sleep. That's good. Focus on that, on the absence of pain. The dense woods outside seemed to close in around us. The full moon's light barely pierced through the trees. I felt like I was falling into the ground in broken, glowing pieces. Jack, I saw The world around me swirled, a blur of dark sensations. My head drooped forward. The car groaned. I saw Mom. She was hurt. Her face was falling off. I saw Mom. She was hurt. No, Kara, you didn't. His tone was calm, matter of fact. In my drunken haze, I couldn't grasp what he meant or how he knew either way. I started crying again, but he cut through my sobs. Kara, please, listen to me. You know as well as I do that Mom is dead and buried. The reservation is 100 miles away. Our mother was buried 100 miles away. She wasn't hurt when she died, remember? She died of the flu. We saw her die, Kara. It was peaceful, remember? Whatever you saw tonight, Kara, it wasn't our mother. Please understand that. Please. But Jack, it was. She was rotting, hurt, her face, the worms. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. Something thudded against the back window. Don't turn around. I wasn't planning to. The world's spinning. Just listen to me, all right? Listen. Mom was not outside the window, I promise you. You have to trust me. Please, please, just trust me. People aren't always what they appear to be, okay? Sometimes they try to look like people, and sometimes when they try, they don't quite get it right. It can be scary, but in the end, it's important. It's very important that they scare you, because it reminds you that they're not people. They're not people. I must have looked so confused because he sighed and said quietly, "You're drunk? You need to sleep. But just because you're drunk doesn't mean you're wrong. You saw something, and maybe you just want to forget it. That's okay. But you need to remember what I'm saying right now. It wasn't Mom. It really wasn't. Promise me you'll remember that, okay? Kara, Kara, Kara." I literally jumped when I heard Jamie's voice snap me out of the daze I'd slipped into while sitting on a bench just outside the airport. Sure enough, he was speed walking toward me, waving his lanky arms and flashing his usual silly grin. Despite myself, I smiled back at him. The Falls is incredibly isolated. Most families here have lived in the area for 4 generations or more. When you come back, it feels like everything has just been waiting, frozen in time, for you to return. He was no different. He hadn't changed at all. Bracing against the icy wind, we walked to his car. He kept talking the whole time, but most of his words got carried away by the cold air. Once inside, he cranked the heater up full blast and pulled off his mittens, red ones with a heart stitched into each palm. We talked a while about running into things, our jobs, college, and what we'd been up to, but I kept glancing nervously at them. Eventually, he noticed me staring and chuckled, saying, I never actually thanked you for bringing those back." I didn't answer, just licked my lips and turned toward the window. We were passing through the next city for now, but I could already feel the edge of the woods near my hometown drawing closer. Jamie hesitated. "Oh, sorry, I know that was right before. It's been 10 years since, I didn't mean to bring it up." I caught his eyes in the rearview mirror and tried to smile. "It's okay, Jamie. Really, I'm fine talking about him." He nodded too fast. I'm glad you came back, Kara. It's good of you to take care of your dad, especially this time of year. I mean, your dad, he's a tough old guy. Hasn't changed a bit. I see him at the grocery store sometimes, and he tells me I've grown since high school. Don't you think so? His proud posture clearly begged for a certain kind of reaction. I didn't give it to him. Instead, I got lost in the sight of Donner's first pine trees speeding past the window. I hadn't seen them in years. They were always so beautiful. I murmured a flat, "Mm-hmm," and his face fell. Instantly, I felt bad. "Sorry, Jamie, Don't worry," he interrupted. "I get it. Your brother, you're thinking about him. I would be too, and I'm sorry, really." I gave him a small, vague nod. That talk with Jack on Christmas Eve was etched into my brain. If it wasn't Mom in the window, then what was it? All at once, Jamie's old story popped into my head. I asked him if he remembered when I took the mittens and why. He chuckled. "Oh, I'm not sure. We were messing around in the forest. Elma's kids back in '96, like always." The reply I had been dreading. "'96, are you certain? Before you got stuck in the tree?" He gave me a puzzled look. "What tree?" I stared at him. "You know, in '99, you were trapped, frozen to a limb. Everyone called you Brown Bear for years." He laughed again, but this one was hollow. Barely there, but enough for me to catch. "Oh, right. Yeah, before that, you said you were freezing, absolutely freezing, so you took them and never returned them." My breath caught. He really thought that's how it went down. That was his version of events. I tried to speak calmly, but I was gasping. "Jamie, you and we never hung out in the woods when we were young. I never stole your gloves. You've got me mixed up with someone else. We didn't meet until 1999. His eyes tightened. "Kara, I know you're upset, but that's no reason to mess with me. I'm not." "Then your memory's wrong." "No, it's not," I snapped fiercer than before. Donner was fading as we neared my home, but the trees still loomed. "I don't know who you were playing snow games with, Jamie, but it wasn't me." He looked at me oddly, like I was speaking another language, then shook his head slowly. No, you're mistaken, and you know it. We always played in those woods as kids. Kara, I don't know why you've forgotten." He fixed his eyes on the road. "Maybe you should take a stroll through Donner and, jog that memory." It was so weird a thing to say that I actually said, "What?" out loud. Take a walk through Donner is the fall's version of get lost. But there was more to it. Maybe it was the frost in his tone, or the strange idea that the woods could somehow make me remember. I didn't have the chance to understand it or even say anything, because he was already stopping in front of my house before I could collect myself. "At last," he muttered, like I couldn't hear him, and flung the car door open. I sat frozen. His sudden mood shift hit me hard, but I snapped out of it when he jerked the door open and hurled my bags into the slushy snow beside me. I was stunned. I got out, grabbed my luggage, and slammed the door behind me in a daze. Before I could even say thanks, Jamie was already reversing. He rolled down the window on the passenger side as he drove by. With a low, sharp edge in his voice, he said, "You know what, Kara Hansen? I know you're trying to track down your brother, but believe me, this isn't how it's done. You're digging for things, stupid things. You're not a stupid girl, Kara. But I think if you keep going like this, you'll uncover something far worse than you expect." He rolled the window back up and drove off. As soon as I walked through the front door, my dad's huge arms wrapped around me in a tight bear hug. He's tall as a pole and unbelievably strong, former wrestling champ from Solomon Falls High, and I doubt he's lost any of that strength in the last 50 years. After he let go, I set my bags by the entrance and kissed him on the cheek. He returned to the half-prepared stew he had bubbling on the stove, and I wandered down the hallway. The chestnut floor groaned beneath my wet boots. Without the old paintings, the hallway walls felt distant, unfamiliar. It had been too long? I picked up the pace. I glimpsed Jack's room at the hallway's end, the thick mahogany door still tightly shut, just like it had been when I left. Grief crashed into me like a freight train. I could see the room in my head, his dresser, his paintings, his deep blue blanket, all of it buried under a thick layer of dust. That image had haunted me for so long. What disturbed me even more was how permanent it all felt. The same day Dad tore down the artwork in a fit of rage, he slammed Jack's door shut and locked it. The snarl in his voice when I asked him afterward told me loud and clear he never meant to open that room again. I must have tried sneaking in countless times late at night before I left town, but I never managed. Dad called, "Dinner, Kara." I cast one last glance at Jack's door, then turned away. He bombarded me with questions for a solid 30 minutes, grinning like a kid the whole time. "How's your job going? Still with that guy you were dating? City treating you all right? Got yourself a car yet? Music turned into more than just a side thing? How are you handling the cold? Got enough warm layers?" I answered truthfully, even though the sweater in the next room kept eating at my mind. I told him I came back home for support. He probably assumed I meant emotional support with the whole 10-year anniversary and everything. His eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen for years as he chatted nonstop. I love my dad more than anyone else alive. He stood by me through 2 losses no one should ever have to go through. He didn't deserve another heartbreak over what came in that package. But still, my brother lingered in my thoughts. Wherever he was, whatever had happened, he didn't deserve that either. I had to rip the bandage off. "Dad, I cut him off mid-sentence during some speech about how a good parka could save your life in a Chicago winter. There's something I need to ask. It's serious." He raised one bushy brow and said, "Boyfriend serious? Or government secret serious?" "Bit of both," I confessed. Dad put his spoon down and pushed back from the table. He stood up and went to get a glass of water. "Go on and tell me then." Suddenly, all the questions I had built up collided inside me, and I blanked. What happened back in 2009 at that children's hospital you worked at? Why did you seal Jack's room and never open it again? What do you recall about Brett and his folks? Did you ever see Mom after she died? Like, really see her? Do you know who sent that sweater? What kind of person would do that? But I sorted my thoughts, took a breath, and finally asked, "Do you remember that day in 2005 when the Mittens came to the house?" His head snapped toward me from the sink so fast, half the water sloshed out of the glass and splashed onto the floor. My dad's always looked younger than his age, but right then he seemed unbelievably worn out, ancient. I stayed silent and waited. Slowly, he gave a nod. I stood from my chair and touched his wrist as softly as I could manage while adrenaline buzzed through my whole body. "Dad, you were scared that night. Don't pretend otherwise. That was 12 years ago, and it still haunts you. Please, tell me what happened." He placed the glass down, rubbed his temples, and walked to the pantry, where he grabbed a glass of scotch. "We'd better have a drink first." On December 31st, 1981, at about 10:30 in the morning, the Quincy family packed peanut butter sandwiches and sliced apples. They double-checked to make sure they brought a map, a water bottle, and a compass. They snugged their scarves close around their necks, then stepped outside, leaving their dog, Buster, to scratch at the door and whimper until they returned, planning to be back in a few hours after a relaxed afternoon hike through Donner. Michael Quincy had a jawline like sculpted stone and a grin so dazzling it could shake the pine needles from the trees. He moved with a swagger instead of a walk and had big, strong hands roughened by years of owning the town's hardware shop. He was a familiar face around town, and his wife, Eliza, even more so, president of the YWCA and a cherished elementary school teacher. She stood tall with cheeks sprinkled with freckles and vivid green eyes, Miss Kennebec County 1978, nearly crowned Miss Maine, USA. Little Lydia Quincy was just 6 then and absolutely adorable. They were admired in Solomon Falls, a cherished family, only looking for a pleasant day out. At noon, all 3 stepped into Donnerwood State Park. Only one returned. The Quincy's were considered missing for days until a gaunt Eliza stumbled from the forest, eyes frenzied, lips stained with blood, arms torn and raw, growling at townsfolk who rushed to help. It took 20 minutes and 2 grown men to restrain her. One of them, Dickie Sullivan, still bears the mark of her bite. She went limp suddenly. She passed away in Dickie's arms, apparently from lack of water. They later found her husband and daughter deep in the forest, far off the main trail, with much of their flesh missing like scavengers had gotten to them first. Bite marks that matched Eliza's on what remained of their skin and bones. But there's more to this tale than what's commonly told. Sheriff Sanchez, her roots just starting to gray, shared this version with me in her office a year after my brother disappeared. It's a small but crucial piece most people misunderstand. The Quincy's hadn't wandered the woods for days. They were inside for just 3 hours before Eliza came staggering out, coughing up bits of flesh into the snow. She wasn't starving. She wasn't dried out. Their water and packed food hadn't even been touched. The former Miss Kennebec County, once a devoted teacher and caring mother, barely entered Donner before something took over, and soon after she emerged, she collapsed and died. Michael's jacket had vanished and wasn't located until a hiker saw it a month later, hanging from the top limb of a tree towering 20 feet tall. The compass turned up around the same time, many miles east of where the jacket had been found, half hidden in the thawing snow. Lydia's coat, footwear, and mittens were never found, or at least that's how the story is told. The thing is, my dad had been working as a pediatric nurse at the city hospital back then, and Lydia Quincy had visited him just 3 weeks before when she came down with the flu. She proudly showed off her brand new mittens, eyes sparkling, chattering so quickly he could barely keep up. They were bright white, crafted from soft cashmere yarn. She even pointed out a tiny feature she loved. The wrists had elastic stitched inside that gathered when she slipped them on to block out the cold. That morning at 11:10 a.m., my father, who was only 31 then, had passed the Quincy family. He paused to talk briefly with Eliza and Michael, who praised the care he had given their daughter, while Lydia played. Lydia's coat and shoes were never located, but that night in our home, when the first mittens arrived, my dad spotted them on the table, and instantly he knew. How could he not? He picked them up and studied them. The same soft yarn, the same gathered wrists. the only difference being the torn thumb and yellow mark. Dad had given up on his glass and was now drinking straight from the Scotch bottle. I mean, what the hell was I supposed to do? Call the sheriff and say the mittens of a child who vanished 3 decades ago just appeared on our doorstep like some express delivery? They found the killer. They figured out who and how. I didn't want to scare you kids, so I let you keep them. I looked at him so long my eyes actually started to dry out, but the second I blinked, hot tears began forming. I started to weep softly, small broken sobs. He pulled me into a hug right away. I know, Care Bear. I never liked that story either. It's horrifying, and I don't understand why those mittens showed up here that day, but the important thing is, it's finished. It's not that, Dad. I sniffled and wiped my nose on my sleeve. It's the other mittens that came after. What? He looked like someone had slapped him. What are you saying? Dad, I sprang up from the couch. I'll tell you everything, I promise. But first you need to see something. I ran to my room, ignoring his calls. I threw the door open, unzipped my suitcase, and dug through it like a frantic animal. I tossed clothes aside until I was buried in a mountain of fabric, travel-sized shampoo bottles and lipsticks scattered like crashed debris. I barely noticed. All I could see was the suitcase before me, now totally empty, completely bare. Kara? Dad's voice came from the hallway. Kara, what the hell is happening? I yanked open the front pocket. Nothing. The side pocket. Nothing. A wave of panic began to crawl across my skin. My heart pounded so fiercely I could hear its rapid pulse echoing in my ears. My breathing grew shallow and strained. Jamie, of course. All that shifting around in his truck must have caused the sweater to fall out. I was convinced of it. I yanked my phone from my pocket so abruptly it nearly flew across the room, and I called the number he had used when he gave me the sweater. It rang. Once, I tapped my foot. Twice, I tapped quicker. 3 times, thank goodness. The voice that answered was the same thin one I recognized, but there was a strange confusion in it I couldn't place. A little deeper, more grown up. I didn't have time to think about it. Jamie Brown speaking. Who's this? Jamie, it's me. Kara, listen, I think I left. Whoa, no way. The voice now sounded thrilled. Kara Hansen? Class of 2010? Get out of here. How have you been? The cruel joke made me so angry I started shouting into the phone. Yes, it's Kara Hansen, and don't play dumb, Jamie. You know exactly who I am. You literally just drove me to my dad's, and I left something super important in your... Sorry, what? Kara, I haven't seen you in 8 years. I haven't been to Solomon Falls since graduation. I live in Boulder now. You can check my Facebook. My wife and kids are on there. Heck, just look me up. My dental clinic has its own page. What do you mean I just gave you a ride? What are you even saying? I hung up. My dad appeared in the doorway. Kara, please tell me what's going on. Dad, I need to ask you something really serious. Do you remember Jamie Brown from high school? He gave a slow nod. Have you seen him since then? Around town, maybe at the store? He looked puzzled. No, never. I just chatted with Mr. Brown the other day. Jamie hasn't set foot here since he was 18. I was completely losing it. I spilled the whole story to my dad, from the mittens arriving monthly to Jamie dropping me off. I searched online. The Jamie I called was telling the truth. He has a website for Brown orthodontics. His Facebook's public. Anyone can see it. I looked through the photos. The man I got into the vehicle with looked almost identical. but in the low light of my room, his hair seemed just a bit lighter. There was a single extra wrinkle on his forehead. I'm not sure if I imagined those tiny changes just to make sense of things. I don't know if Jack's words from that night are stuck in my mind. They don't always get it right. Who exactly did he mean by they? Dad contacted Sheriff Sanchez. We're meeting her tomorrow. He locked himself away in his room. That spark in his eyes is missing now. I can't hold it against him. Jack, I'm trying to stay strong for you, but it's incredibly difficult. Everything feels so overwhelming and scary, but I'm not giving up. I'm going to do all I possibly can. I'll reach out to the people who knew you. I'll search near the forest trailhead, no matter what Dad says or how hard he tries to stop me. I'm opening your door. I will figure out the truth behind this. I will find you.